Picture this. You're lying in bed, paralyzed by fear, watching a dark figure standing at the foot of your mattress. You can't move, you can't scream, and then you realize this isn't your bedroom. You're sleeping in a house where 8 people were brutally murdered over 100 years ago. Their killer was never found. And now, in the suffocating silence of 2 a.m., you're not alone. What would you do? Would you run? Would you freeze? Or would you convince yourself it's all in your head, even as the closet door slowly creaks open? Before we continue, I need to tell you something. The stories you're about to hear are sent in by viewers like you. Some names and details have been changed to protect privacy, but these accounts are said to be true. Real people, real experiences, real terror. In the fall of 2019, a woman we'll call Claire was driving cross-country, searching for something she couldn't quite name. At 32 years old, she'd just quit her marketing job in Seattle, packed her car with whatever fit, and pointed herself east. No plan, no destination, just the open road and a desperate need to feel something other than the crushing weight of her ordinary life. She'd been scrolling through unusual Airbnb listings when she found it, a place that made her pulse quicken for the first time in months. The Villisca Axe Murder House in rural Iowa. The infamous site where, on a June night in 1912, someone entered through an unlocked door and killed 8 people with an axe while they slept. 6 children, 2 adults. The murderer was never caught. Now, the house operates as a museum and overnight stay location for the morbidly curious. Claire booked a night without hesitation. When she arrived in the tiny town of Villisca, population barely over 1,000, the locals at the gas station gave her strange looks. One older man pumping gas at the next station over asked where she was headed. When she told him, his expression shifted. "Stay downstairs," he said quietly. "The attic's not friendly after midnight." Claire laughed it off. She'd heard the stories, the supposed hauntings, the paranormal investigators who claimed to capture voices and shadows. She didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in adrenaline, in shaking herself out of numbness. That's what she told herself as she pulled up to the modest white house just before sunset. The caretaker, a woman in her 60s named Helen, gave Claire the keys and a brief rundown. "Lock the door. Don't go outside after dark. There's a flashlight in the kitchen. Cell service is spotty." Then she paused, studying Claire's face. "You sure you want to do this alone?" Claire nodded. Helen sighed and left. The house was smaller than Claire expected. Cramped rooms, low ceilings. The air felt thick, like it hadn't moved in decades. She set up her sleeping bag in the downstairs parlor, exactly where one of the children had died. She ate cold pizza from a gas station, scrolled on her phone until the battery hit 20%, then lay down around 11. For a while, nothing happened. Then, just past 2 in the morning, Claire's eyes snapped open. She didn't know why. The room was freezing, her breath misted in the air, and there at the foot of her sleeping bag stood a silhouette. Tall, motionless, watching. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The figure didn't move either. It just stood there, a black shape against the faint glow of the streetlight outside. Then, slowly, the closet door beside her began to creak open, inch by inch. Claire's throat closed. She wanted to scream, but nothing came out. When she finally forced herself to sit up, the figure was gone. The closet door hung half open. Claire grabbed her flashlight, hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. She swept the beam across the room. Empty. Just old furniture and peeling wallpaper. She told herself it was her imagination, her mind playing tricks in an unfamiliar place. She'd been stressed, exhausted. That was all. But when she lay back down, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The next few hours crawled by. Every creak of the house made her flinch. Around 4 in the morning, she heard footsteps overhead. Slow, deliberate steps crossing the ceiling, back and forth, back and forth. Claire knew she was alone in the house. Helen had confirmed it. No one else had booked a stay. Yet the footsteps continued, methodical and heavy, like someone pacing in the children's room upstairs. She pulled the sleeping bag over her head and waited for dawn. When sunlight finally crept through the windows, Claire felt foolish. She'd let the house's reputation get to her. That was all. But then she went to the bathroom to splash water on her face, and she saw them. Handprints. Small handprints smudged on the mirror as if a child had pressed their palms against the glass. Claire backed away. She hadn't touched the mirror. She hadn't seen those marks the night before. Her stomach turned. She grabbed her phone and snapped a picture, hands trembling. Then she noticed her voice recorder, the one she'd left running on the dresser to capture any unusual sounds. She'd forgotten about it. Hesitantly, she played it back. At first, nothing. Just the ambient hum of the house. Then, around 2:07 in the morning, she heard it. Breathing. Slow, raspy breathing that wasn't hers. And then, faint but unmistakable, a whisper. "Get out!" Claire should have left right then. But something kept her rooted. Curiosity, stubbornness, or maybe the same inexplicable pull that had brought her here in the first place. She decided to stay one more night. This time, she kept every light on. She positioned herself in the center of the parlor, sleeping bag unrolled, phone fully charged, flashlight within arm's reach. She wouldn't sleep. She'd stay awake and document everything. But exhaustion is a cruel thing. Somewhere around 1 in the morning, her eyelids grew heavy. She fought it, but her body betrayed her. When she jolted awake, it was 2:07 a.m. Exactly. The lights were off. All of them. The house was submerged in darkness so complete it felt like drowning. And standing in the doorway to the parlor was the figure. Closer this time. Close enough that Claire could make out the shape of broad shoulders, the tilt of a head, and in its hand, something long and dark. An axe. Claire's scream caught in her throat. She scrambled backward, her sleeping bag tangling around her legs. The figure stepped forward. The temperature dropped so fast that frost began forming on the windows. One by one, the doors in the house began to slam shut. Bang, bang, bang. Each one louder than the last, echoing through the cramped rooms like gunshots. Claire kicked free of the sleeping bag and ran. She bolted into the hallway, her flashlight beam jerking wildly. Behind her, she heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate steps following her. Not running, walking, like it had all the time in the world. She reached the front door and grabbed the handle. Locked. Her fingers fumbled with the deadbolt slick with sweat. The footsteps grew louder. Closer. She could feel the cold radiating behind her, a presence so heavy it made her knees buckle. Finally, the lock gave. She threw the door open and stumbled onto the porch, gasping for air. Behind her, the house fell silent. Claire didn't go back inside. She sat in her car until Helen arrived at dawn. When the caretaker saw her pale, shaking, and wrapped in a blanket on the front lawn, she didn't ask questions. She just nodded, like she'd seen it before. Later, Helen confirmed that others had reported similar experiences. Always around 2:07 a.m. Always the figure. Always the footsteps. And always, without fail, the sense of something that didn't want you there. Claire left the voice recording with a local paranormal group. They analyzed it. The breathing, they said, didn't match any known pattern. The whisper was there, clear as day. Get out. As for the handprints on the mirror, Helen said she'd cleaned that glass the morning before Claire arrived. Yet there they were, smudged and small, as if a child's hands had pressed against the glass from the other side. Claire never went back. She doesn't talk about that night much, but when she does, her hands still shake. She'll tell you this: whatever walks the halls of the Villisca house isn't a memory. It's not a story. It's something that still exists, trapped in that place, repeating the same terrible night over and over. And if you're foolish enough to spend the night there, you become part of it too. So here's my question for you. If you found yourself in that house, in the suffocating darkness at 2:07 a.m., face to face with something that shouldn't exist, what would you do? Would you stay and confront it? Or would you run and never look back? Think about that, because some doors, once opened, can never truly be closed. That was just the beginning. What you're about to hear next is a story that left scars that never healed, a nightmare that followed someone home and refused to let go. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. In 2017, a man we'll call Marcus bought his first house. He was 29, a software engineer who'd saved for years to afford a small 2-bedroom home in a quiet suburb outside of Portland, Oregon. The neighborhood was perfect, tree-lined streets, friendly neighbors, a park 2 blocks away. Marcus felt like he'd finally made it. The house itself was a 1960s ranch style with hardwood floors and a basement he planned to convert into an office. The previous owners, an elderly couple, had moved into assisted living. They'd left the place in decent shape, though there was an odd detail Marcus noticed during the walkthrough. Every window had thick curtains, every single one. Heavy, dark fabric that blocked out almost all natural light. When Marcus asked the realtor about it, she shrugged. "Old folks like their privacy," she said. Marcus didn't think much of it. He moved in on a Saturday in late September. The first few nights were uneventful. He unpacked boxes, assembled furniture, ordered pizza. It felt like home. Then, on the 4th night, Marcus woke up at 3 in the morning with the distinct, unshakable feeling that someone was watching him. He lay perfectly still, eyes open, scanning the dark bedroom. Nothing. Just shadows and the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. But the feeling didn't go away. It pressed down on him, heavy and suffocating. Finally, he sat up and turned on the bedside lamp. That's when he saw it. Outside his bedroom window, through the gap in the curtains he'd left open for fresh air, was a face, pale, expressionless, staring directly at him. Marcus shouted and jumped out of bed. By the time he reached the window, the face was gone. He yanked the curtains fully open, heart pounding, and peered into the backyard. Empty. No movement. No footprints in the dew-covered grass. Just the dim outline of his fence and the neighbor's house beyond. He told himself it was a nightmare, a half-awake hallucination, but the image stayed with him. That face, pale and smooth, like wax. Eyes that didn't blink. The next morning, Marcus walked the perimeter of his property. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, no disturbances. He checked with his neighbors. No one had seen anything unusual. One neighbor, a woman in her 50s named Karen, gave him a strange look when he described the face at the window. "You should keep those curtains closed," she said, "especially at night." Marcus asked why. Karen hesitated, then shook her head. "Just do it. Trust me." That night, Marcus closed every curtain in the house. He double-checked the locks on the doors and windows. He even set up his laptop in the bedroom to record while he slept, the webcam aimed at the window. If someone came back, he'd have proof. He lay in bed, tense and alert, listening to every sound. Around 2 in the morning, he finally started to drift off. That's when he heard it. A soft tap, tap, tap against the glass. Marcus froze. The tapping continued, slow and rhythmic, like someone gently knocking with one fingernail. He reached for his phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it at the window. The curtains were drawn, but the tapping didn't stop. Tap, tap, tap. He crept toward the window, every instinct screaming at him to stay in bed. But he had to know. He had to see. Slowly, he pulled back the edge of the curtain. Pressed against the glass inches from his face was the same pale face. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, staring. Marcus screamed and stumbled backward, dropping his phone. The face didn't move. It just stayed there, pressed against the window, breath fogging the glass. Then slowly, it smiled. Marcus grabbed a baseball bat from his closet and ran outside, barefoot and shaking. He rounded the corner of the house, bat raised, ready to confront whoever was tormenting him. But the backyard was empty. No one at the window, no one in the yard, just the cold night air and the distant sound of a dog barking. He checked the laptop recording the next morning. The footage showed him sleeping. Then at 2:14 a.m., the tapping sound was clearly audible. But the webcam, pointed at the window, showed nothing. No face, no figure. Just the closed curtain gently moving, as if stirred by a breeze. Except the window was closed. Over the next 2 weeks, it got worse. Marcus would wake every night at the same time, always with the feeling of being watched. Sometimes he'd hear the tapping. Other times he'd hear footsteps in the hallway, slow and deliberate, stopping just outside his bedroom door. Once he found muddy footprints leading from the back door to the basement stairs. But he lived alone. The locks hadn't been tampered with. There was no explanation. One night, Marcus decided he'd had enough. He wasn't going to be terrorized in his own home. He set up cameras in every room, motion activated, recording to cloud storage. If something was happening, he'd capture it. That night, he lay in bed with the lights off, waiting. The house was silent. Hours passed. Then, at 2:14 a.m., his phone buzzed. Motion detected in the basement. Marcus grabbed his bat and his phone. The live feed showed the basement, dimly lit by a single overhead bulb he'd left on. And there, standing in the center of the concrete floor, was a figure. Tall, motionless, facing the camera. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, staring directly into the lens. Then slowly it raised one hand and pointed, directly at the camera, directly at Marcus. Marcus dropped the phone and ran. He didn't stop to grab his keys or his wallet. He ran out the front door in his pajamas and didn't look back. He spent the night in his car, parked under a street light at a 24-hour diner. When the sun came up, he called the police. They searched the house. Every room, every closet, the basement, nothing. No signs of entry, no one hiding. But when they reviewed the camera footage, they found something Marcus hadn't seen. After the figure pointed at the camera, it walked forward, closer, closer, until its face filled the entire frame. And then the feed cut out. The camera had been physically disconnected. But here's the thing, the camera was mounted 7 feet up the wall. There was no ladder in the basement, no furniture to climb on, no way for anyone to reach it. Marcus never spent another night in that house. He hired a property manager to handle the sale and moved into a friend's apartment across town. The house sat empty for months before a new family bought it. Marcus never told them what happened. He couldn't. Who would believe him? But 6 months later, Marcus got a call from the property manager. The new owners had moved out. They didn't give a reason, but they'd left in a hurry, abandoning most of their furniture. The house went back on the market. It's been sold 3 times since then. No one stays longer than a year. Marcus still doesn't know what he saw in that basement. He doesn't know who or what was watching him through the windows every night. But he knows this. Whatever it was, it's still there, waiting, watching. And if you ever find yourself looking at a house with heavy curtains on every window, maybe ask why. So here's my question for you. If you woke up tonight and saw a face pressed against your window, staring at you with unblinking eyes, what would you do? Would you investigate? Call the police? Or would you run? And if you ran, where would you go? Because some things don't stay in the places they haunt. Some things follow you. Think about that tonight when you close your eyes. And maybe, just maybe, keep those curtains closed. If these stories made your skin crawl, you're not alone. Thousands of people have experienced things they can't explain, things that defy logic and reason. And if you have a story of your own, we want to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. Who knows? Your story might be the next one we share. Until then, stay safe. Lock your doors. Close your curtains. And remember, some things are better left unseen. Picture this. You move into a beautiful Victorian home in small-town America. The rent is surprisingly cheap. Your girlfriend loves it. But within 72 hours, You're covered in scratches you didn't make. Your electronics are turning on by themselves. And every night you feel small hands pressing down on your chest while you sleep. Now here's the terrifying part. This isn't fiction. This happened to a real man in Atchison, Kansas. And according to every witness, every investigator, every previous tenant, the entity in that house has one very specific target. It only attacks men, not women, not children, just men, and nobody knows why. What you're about to hear is based on documented accounts, hospital records, and footage that still circulates online today. This is the story of the Sallie House and the spirit that refuses to let go. Before we continue, a quick note. The events you're about to hear are based on real testimonies and investigations. Some of the details are deeply unsettling. Viewer discretion is advised. These accounts have been documented by paranormal investigators, journalists, and the people who lived through them. Let's go back to the spring of 2019. Marcus Brennan, 28 years old, was looking for a fresh start. He just landed a job at a logistics company in Atchison, a quiet riverside town in northeast Kansas. His girlfriend Emily was finishing her nursing degree remotely, so they needed a place that was affordable, spacious, and had good internet. That's when they found the listing, a charming 2-story rental just blocks from the historic downtown. Hardwood floors, original fixtures, bay windows. The rent was almost half what they'd expected. Marcus thought they'd hit the jackpot. The landlord, an older man named Mr. Calloway, was upfront about one thing during the showing. He looked Marcus dead in the eye and said, "You might hear things at night. Old houses settle. Don't let it bother you." Emily laughed it off. Marcus shrugged. They signed the lease that afternoon. What Mr. Calloway didn't mention, and what Marcus didn't bother to Google until later, was that their new home had a name in paranormal circles. It was called the Sallie House. And for over 30 years, it had been considered one of the most actively haunted locations in the Midwest. They moved in their furniture, ordered pizza, and fell asleep on an air mattress in the bedroom. Emily slept soundly. Marcus did not. Around 2 a.m, he woke to a sensation he couldn't quite explain. It felt like someone was sitting on his chest, not pressing down violently, but definitely there. A weight. A presence. He opened his eyes and saw nothing but darkness. Then he felt it. Breath on his face. Cold. Faint. Like a child exhaling near his skin. He jerked upright, gasping. The pressure vanished instantly. Emily stirred beside him but didn't wake. Marcus sat there in the dark, heart hammering, telling himself it was just a nightmare. Just stress from the move. But then he heard it. A soft voice. Barely a whisper, coming from the corner of the room. It said his name. Marcus. He froze. The voice was small, high-pitched, almost playful. He reached for his phone and turned on the flashlight. The room was empty, but the closet door, which he'd closed before bed, was now wide open. The next morning, Marcus said nothing to Emily. He didn't want to sound paranoid. But when he got out of the shower, he noticed something in the bathroom mirror. 3 long scratches running down his left forearm. They were deep enough to sting, fresh enough to still be red. He hadn't felt them happen. Emily asked if he'd scraped himself on a box while unpacking. He said maybe, but he didn't believe it. Over the next week, things escalated. The scratches kept appearing, on his arms, his neck, once across his ribs. Emily never had a single mark. At night, lights would flicker in rooms Marcus entered. His phone would unlock by itself, the flashlight turning on in his pocket for no reason. He started recording voice memos on his phone, just to document what was happening. On the 4th night, he played one back. Beneath his own voice describing the scratches, there was another sound. Faint, but unmistakable, the giggle of a little girl. Emily heard it too. Her face went pale. That's when Marcus finally Googled the house. What he found made his stomach drop. The Sallie House wasn't just haunted, it was infamous. Documented by paranormal investigators since the early 90s, featured on television shows, discussed in books, And every account, every testimony, every piece of footage said the same thing. The spirit was a young girl, possibly named Sallie, and she despised adult men. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Marcus wanted to leave. Emily convinced him to stay. She was a skeptic. She believed in logical explanations. Maybe the scratches were self-inflicted during sleep. Maybe the voices were audio artifacts. Maybe the door opened because the latch was loose. But Marcus knew better. He felt it in his bones. Something in that house hated him. On the 9th night, Emily went to visit her parents for the weekend. Marcus was alone. He decided to set up his laptop in the bedroom and record overnight, just to see if he could catch something on camera. He went to bed around 11. He woke at midnight to the sound of glass breaking. His bedroom mirror had cracked straight down the middle. He sat up, breathing hard, and that's when he saw them. Small footprints in the dust on the hardwood floor. Child-sized, leading from the closet to his bed. He grabbed his phone and started recording. His hands were shaking. He panned the camera around the room, narrating what he was seeing, trying to keep his voice steady. Then he felt it. A sharp, searing pain across his back, like nails being dragged from his shoulder blades to his lower spine. He screamed and spun around. No one was there. But in the hallway, just beyond the doorway, he saw her. A little girl. Pale skin, dark hair, hollow, unblinking eyes. She stood perfectly still, staring at him. And then she smiled. Marcus ran. He didn't grab his keys, didn't grab his wallet, didn't even put on shoes. He bolted out the front door and didn't stop until he was 2 blocks away, standing under a streetlight, chest heaving, back on fire. He called Emily. She thought he was having a breakdown. He called his brother, who drove 3 hours to pick him up. By the time they returned to the house the next morning with a police escort, Marcus refused to go inside. His brother and the officer retrieved his things. The scratches on Marcus's back were deep, 4 parallel lines evenly spaced running nearly a foot down his spine. The officer took photos. Marcus went to the emergency room. The attending physician noted the injuries were consistent with fingernail trauma, but couldn't explain how they could have been self-inflicted given their location. Marcus never went back. He broke the lease, lost his deposit, and moved in with his brother 2 towns over. Emily stayed skeptical until she reviewed the footage from that final night. The video showed Marcus lying in bed, and standing in the corner of the room, barely visible in the shadows, was the figure of a small child, watching him. The timestamp showed she'd been there for over an hour before he woke up. So who was Sallie? And why does she target men? The most popular theory comes from local historians and paranormal researchers. In the late 1800s, the house was allegedly the home and office of a frontier doctor. According to legend, a young girl around 6 years old was brought in with severe abdominal pain. The doctor, either out of desperation or incompetence, attempted an emergency surgery without proper anesthesia. The girl died on the table, screaming. Some believe her spirit never left. Others think she blames all men for what that doctor did to her. There's no hard evidence for this story. No death certificate has been found. No records confirm a doctor ever lived there. But the experiences are real. Dozens of tenants over the decades have reported the same phenomena. Scratches, shadows, voices, and always, the attacks focus on men. Marcus isn't alone, and he's not the last. Would you stay in a house like that even for one night? Could you sleep knowing something in the dark remembers its pain and takes it out on you? How would you feel if you woke up tomorrow covered in scratches you didn't make, knowing no one else in the house was touched? Think about that. The Sallie House still stands today. It's been turned into a paranormal tourism site. People pay to spend the night there to see if they'll experience what Marcus did. Some laugh it off, some leave within hours. But every single man who stayed there reports the same thing. You're not welcome. and she'll make sure you know it. Here's what haunts me most about this story. It's not the scratches. It's not even the apparition. It's the specificity. This isn't a random haunting. It's targeted. It's intentional. Whatever is in that house has a memory. It has anger. It has a purpose. And for over a century, it's been carrying out the same violent revenge night after night on every man who dares to sleep under that roof. Marcus never went back. He still has the scars. He still has the footage. And to this day, he refuses to talk about what he felt in those final seconds before he ran. He told his brother once off the record that it wasn't just fear, it was recognition. Like the thing in that hallway knew him, knew his name, knew his guilt, his shame, his every failure as a man, and it wanted him to suffer for all of it. That's what makes the Sallie House different. It's not just a ghost story, it's a reckoning. So here's my question for you. If you were Marcus, would you have stayed? Would you have tried to help her, to understand her, to set her free? Or would you have done exactly what he did and run? And what does it say about us, about our guilt, about the things we carry, that a child's ghost can make grown men flee in terror? Maybe she's not the monster. Maybe we are. Let me know what you think in the comments. Would you spend a night in the Sallie House? What would you do if you saw her standing in your hallway? And if you've ever experienced something like this, I want to hear your story. Drop it below. Thanks for watching. If this story unsettled you, good. That means you're paying attention. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you never miss our next investigation. Because trust me, this is just the beginning. There are places in this world where the dead don't rest, and we're going to visit every single one of them. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there. And whatever you do, don't ignore the scratches.